Okay.
Okay. Good evening, my Rabbi. Parshas Pinchas, and we're in the sugya of Golus and Geula. Golus and Geula, Bein HaMetzorim. The Maharal, what we're learning this week is like from last week's Sefer Netzach Yisrael. Netzach Yisrael talks about the Nitzchias, the eternity of Klal Yisrael, and Sefer Netzach is known as the Sefer of Golus and Geula of Klal Yisrael. Over here on page Tzadik Vav in Perik Yudalid, the Maharal brings down a Gemara in Ksubis. We're being mamshech a thought that we spoke about last week when we learned about Bilam's brachos to Klal Yisrael. For those of you who were here, if you remember, the Maharal explained no one ever had gebenched, blessed Klal Yisrael, and talked about the highest dargas of Klal Yisrael, the madreg of Klal Yisrael, the way Bilam Harosha did. As the Maharal explained, Bilam was an outsider, and he was able to see Klal Yisrael in their tzura hamushlemes, what Klal Yisrael is supposed to be like. And therefore, when he spoke about Klal Yisrael, he talked about the fact that Klal Yisrael, la'asad lava, will be even bigger than Malachim. The Malachim state will ask, Rashi quotes it, Ma po'al keil. They'll be asking Klal Yisrael, was did the Eibishter? Because Klal Yisrael be hechavi the Malachim, bigger than the Malachim. That's what we spoke about last week. Even Moshe and Yaakov Avinu, who gave brachas, did not give brachas the way Bilam did. This week, being mamshech that thought, the Maharal teaches us what happens when Klal Yisrael is not on the madrega. When we're in a matzav of kol roid feha hisigua bein hamitzarim, where those who pursue us can catch us, because we're not on the madrega. It's called bein hamitzarim, between the two tzaras, between Shavasa B'Tammuz and between Tisha B'Av. Maharal over here quotes a Gemara, Beperek Metzias Isha, Gemara in Ksubis. If you can see, it's in your first column, Tanu Rabbanan, Ma'aseh Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. The story was, every detail of this story is noteworthy. Every detail of this Ma'aseh is meant to teach us a lesson. Ma'aseh Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai shayaroichev al hachamor. He was riding on a donkey. V'hoyoytze min Yerushalayim. He was leaving Yerushalayim. V'hoyu talmidov mehalchen achrav. There was an entourage of talmidim following him. V'ro'o riva achas. He saw a young lady. Shehoisa milaketes se'oirim. She was picking out barley. Mibein glole behemton shel aravayim. She was picking out food. Nebuch. What kind of food? Barley, which is basically animal food. From not the food that the animal had not yet eaten, but the food that the animal had eaten and the excrements that came out and whatever was not digested, what was left from nebuch, the dung of the animal, mizeh hoisa melaketes, nebuch. Obda kivon shiro soishisaim nisatva bisa'ara ve'omda lefanov. She wrapped her hair, she got up, and in a trying to show a level of decency, of self-respect. Amra loy Rebbe, parneseni, be mefarnes mi chop nishvus zu essen. Amra biti, pasmiat, who are you? Amrullah Bas Nagdimen Ben Gurion Ani. If you learn Daf Yomi, Nagdimen Ben Gurion was a person who stopped the sun in middle of the day. The sun stopped for him so that it should rain and the well should fill up. He was one of the richest men that ever lived in Yerushalayim. I, says this young lady, am his daughter. You want to think of a gevir, right? You don't have to go so far to think of a gevir. Imagine the richest Jew you know and think of his daughter. Okay? Amar Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, Ashreichem Yisrael. There's the Maharal skips a piece. The Gemara says he remembered how much he signed on her ksuba. Was bringing a Gemara. Somebody want to bring a Gemara ksubas for a minute? Bring a Gemara. Let's see the Gemara for a minute, please, Rabbi. Say.
Crazy enough.
Was it
Crazy enough.
Yeah. She also did her chassan was a rich boy too.
So they had a prenup.
They had a ksuba. A ksuba can sein a prenup. You treat your wife nicely, and that the ksuba is good enough. I'm a chobin, please. Amar labiti mamen beis avicha. The money of your father's house, Heichen Halach, where is it? Amar lo, Rabbi, Loi kedin maslinan milsa b'Yerushalayim. Didn't they used to say the following mashal? Melach mamoin chosar. If you want to salt your money, give it away. Salt preserves. Kanirei didn't give away enough. From your father-in-law's house. Heichenu. Amar zeh, boz. Amar loy, she said, boz zeh v'ibra zeh. Both of them lost their money. Amar lo Rabbi. She said to him, Rabbi, Zochar ato shechasamta al ktubasi. You remember you signed on my ksuba. Amar lo Talmid. If he turned to his Talmidim, he says, Zochar ani. Keshechatamti al ksubasa. It was Aleph Alofim Dinrei Zov. Thousands upon thousands of Dinrei Zov, Chutz Mishel Chama. Besides for her father-in-law. Her ksuba was a king's ransom. Gurnisht is left. Continues the Maharal.
Where'd it go?
Bocha Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. The Maharal doesn't quote it. The Gemara says he cried. V'omar Ashreichem Yisrael. Bizman shatem oisim etzoyin shalmokim. When you do the Ratzon of Hashem, ein kol uma v'loshen shoylet b'chem. No one can touch you. Ubizman she'ein atem oisim etzoyin shalmokim. But when you don't do the Ratzon of Hashem, Oznim Sorim Biyad Uma Shveila. You're in the hands of a low nation. V'loi Biyad Uma Shveila, Rak Biyad Behemtam Shal Uma Shveila. Not just you are in their hands, but darfst umkimmen. You need umkimmen. Wie soll ich man umkimmen?
You got to come on to.
You have to come on to the behemoths of the Ummah Shveila. That's what Yochanan ben Zakkai said, and that's what the Gemara is. That's the story in the Gemara. What's the lesson? Zog the Maharal, lo me frag na kashe. Mit ein kashe wird man verstehen als. Frag the Maharal, v'yesh l'tmua. How in the world could Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai use the lotion of Ashreichem Yisrael? How could he say Ashrei? The Ka'ama Ashreichem Shemosum Biyad Uma Shveila V'lo Yela B'Amen V'chishayich Loshen Ashrei. How can you say that? Zog the Maharal. Aval Adover Zeh K'moy Sheba'arnu. Klal Yisrael is expected to be an Ummah Shlema. In your underlines over here on this page, if you look at the second column, She'ein li Yisrael shum madrega beinanis. Yidden have never meant to be and never will be stam beinanis. It's not for them. Oy she moishlim ala koil, oy shakol moishlim aleihem. Or they're moishel on everyone, or everybody's moishel by us. What's the pshat? Last week we mentioned, when Bilam Haroshat Gezen Klal Yisrael, he saw Klal Yisrael the way the Eibishter showed it to him, betachlis hashleimus. Lo hoya novi. There was never a person was a giret azoy shein and azoy gut whoever spoke like about Klal Yisrael the way Bilam Haroshat spoke. Azoy zok the Maharal. To speak about Klal Yisrael in such a madrega that he saw how they were bigger than the Malachim. How the whole world is totally in Klal Yisrael. Ra oisam b'shleimus amiti. And that's b'mehera v'yameinu, which will become nizgale be'ezras Hashem when Mashiach comes. The good skite, the completeness that there's in Klal Yisrael. The fact that the Avos HaKadoshim, as we've mentioned many times, the Avos HaKadoshim, lo sholat behem yetzer hara, that the yetzer hara had no shlita over them. That the Yetzer Hara could not, that Avram, Yitzchak, v'Yaakov, each of them, together and separately, were able to conquer the Koiches Hara and create an Ummah Shlema known as Am Hashem. The three of them, Avram, Yitzchak, v'Yaakov, was able to bring back the Tzuras HaOdam. Atem kruyim Odam, ve'einu masoilum kruyim Odam. Zog the heilige Maharal. Aval adover hazeh k'moy shebe'arnu lecha. Ki bevadai bezeh yesh lirois v'lezboinon mailas Yisrael el yoina. From this story, you see how great Klal Yisrael is. Sheyesh lehem mishpat suras hashleima asher mitzad atzmam. For the madreg of Klal Yisrael, who we are and what is expected of us, has the koyach of a neshama within us that has a koyach to conquer over kol dover ra shebesaychenu ubesha'olam. We have a neshama which is a chelek elekai lamala. So much good licked in Klal Yisrael, that a person has the koyach to be mizgaber, a yid has the koyach to be mizgaber over his chelek hara and be metayar himself. Ve'ein underlined, royu loy chesaron klal. Me'ikra dedina Klal Yisrael shouldn't have any chesaron. Ve'chesaron b'tzura, so when Klal Yisrael is b'chesaron, means to say that we don't exist. When we're not on the madreg that we're supposed to be, there's no middle ground for Klal Yisrael. Either we're on top or we don't exist. Says the Maharal, what's the message? What's the message that this young lady who was so wealthy, who had a ksuba like a king's ransom, has to take her food from the waste of an animal? Mozain, food, is what sustains a person. Food, zon, sustains a person. When the Gemara wants to tell us that there's no mitzias of Klal Yisrael in this world if we're not where we're supposed to be, The Gemara teaches us with a lesson. Not that she got food from the market. Not that she had to go and beg for food and she was such a rich woman. That wouldn't be enough. That means that somewhere in the world someone has Rachmanis. No, she is on the Madrega, the Mitzvah. She represents at that moment, she's representing Klal Yisrael. And Klal Yisrael, when they're not the way they're supposed to be, they have no place to exist in this world. And if they are existing, it's coming from the lowest of the low, from the waste of the animal. You can't live that way. That's exactly the point. And since the world has to have Klal Yisrael, because if not for Klal Yisrael, there would be no world. If not for Klal Yisrael, there would be no world. So there's only one direction they can go, and that's up. There's only one way we can go. When we hit rock bottom, that itself becomes the siba that we have to go up. This was the story of Purim. When Haman was successful in passing a decree, B'chosemes HaMelech, lahashmid v'lahareg es kol haYehudim, and that was accepted, and it went out b'chol medinas HaMelech, and the Goyim, the Soinim, were ready to wipe out Klal Yisrael. That lowest point of Klal Yisrael was the tipping point where they have to go up, because you can't have a world without Klal Yisrael. And it can't be that Klal Yisrael is going to be erased. So that Gedola Hasoras HaTabas, that Hasoras HaTabas was in itself the reason that Klal Yisrael should be Chayzer, not Stam. Kimu v'kiblu. The darga that Klal Yisrael bounced back to was such a high madrega that they went back to Kabbalas HaTorah, which is the shenste madrega of Klal Yisrael. Ki'ish echad b'leiv echad. In Har Sinai, Ani amarti elakim atem b'nei elyon kulchem. Klal Yisrael was on the madrega ki'ish echad b'leiv echad of one surah sa'adam. Vayichen sham, one surah sa'adam. Leich kenois kol haYehudim, one surah sa'adam, one group of people, no split whatsoever. What happened in Purim? They got Bayis Sheni. I say over for my Rabbi, Zechrona Livracha. During Bayis Sheni, if Klal Yisrael would have, after they defeated the Greeks, by the Nes of Chanukah, if Hashmonai Uvanov would have given the Malchus over to Malchus Beis David, Bayis Sheni could have become Bayis Shlishi. Klal Yisrael could have been Zoicha. There was a potential in the rebuilding of the Beis HaMikdash and Bayis Sheni that was shlav achrei shlav, madrega after madrega. Like Klal Yisrael could have been zoicha to the tikkun hasholem, and we could have saved ourselves this whole chazer, the whole malchus revi, the whole thing. We could have been zoicha. Klal Yisrael had gotten to the potential because they went down so low that they could bounce back. They could come back b'chazora. They could be chayzer to yene darge. In the beginning. In the beginning there was. But as soon as Bayis Sheni was built, right away Ba'atchala, Anshe Knesset Gedolah decided that we can't have Nevi'us in Bayis Sheni, and therefore they fasted 3 days and 3 nights, and right in the beginning it was forfeited. It was gone. It was gone. That was it. Shenish Geven. When Hashmonai Uvanov were successful and beat the Greeks, and they were Zoicha to Nes Chanukah, and they were once again mechanech the Beis HaMikdash, there was a potential and a possibility to have Oz egmor b'shir mizmor chanukas hamizbeach. They could have finished it off then and not have to wait anymore. Shtei dozok to Maharal. This is the message. Look on the top of column 2. Mizat sad he yosef bechusam mechol asher b'madrega chomis asher yeshel metzias ma. When Klal Yisrael is not on the madrega that they're supposed to be, Klal Yisrael is not where we're not who we're supposed to be, then there's no middle kacha, sort of, name. When Klal Yisrael is not who Klal Yisrael is supposed to be, then they fall apart completely. Ve'zu nechsheves ke'ilu ein lo metzias rak nederes. Taking oichel from the behema, and not from the behema, but taking from, picking it through from the glole behema, says the Maharal, means that Klal Yisrael, the Eibishter, is not willing to be soivel if you're not on the madreg you're supposed to be. Ashreichem Yisrael. The Maharal said, how could you say Ashreichem? How could you be lucky? Look what's going on. The teretz is from them gufa, that the fact that the only way this young lady who had been so wealthy and everything she could have ever wanted, and now she's up with nothing, because you can't stay that way. It means you have to go up. You can't have a Metzias and not be Klal Yisrael. Und das warten wir. And that's what we're waiting for. When the Mashiach will come, I say this all the time, Klal Yisrael doesn't chap how big the neshama that we have is. And their neshamas are so great. We have such a madrega of gutzkeit, rachmanim, baishanim, goyim lechasodim. We don't look at ourselves as the chelek elekai mimal that we really are. We don't look at ourselves and we don't appreciate the fact that every Yid, Ba'asher Hu Sham, no matter how silly we are, no matter how many mistakes we make, and every Jew, no matter where they are, is a chelek elekai mimal, a chelek atoiv, like by Moshe Rabbeinu, vayar ki toiv. The goodness of Moshe Rabbeinu, state, the Reb Chaim Volozhiner writes, that goodness is in every single person. Sheish meyos ragle elef asher anoichi bekirboy. Moshe Rabbeinu says, Ich bin in zei. I'm in those people. That's the gutzkeit that there is in every single Yid. That will become evident when the Mashiach comes. That will become evident. Yidden will shine. The way Yidden shined by Moshe Rabbeinu, Koran or Panov, Klal Yisrael had 2 crowns, but we lost them because of the Chet HaEgel. We lost our darga when we created the Chet HaEgel. That's how Bein HaMitzarim began. Bein HaMitzarim began with Klal Yisrael making an egel and losing their crowns and losing the majesty. And then when the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed, which was the Beis Elokim, we totally lost our madrega. But like Chazal teach us, it's a madrega that comes back, and that's waiting to come back to us. So when you see a Yid whose things aren't going well, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai said, Ashreichem Yisrael. It's not shayach for you to stay on a low madrega. The Eibusher is not soivel that a Yid should be a kleiner mensch. He expects, we say in Yiddish, fodert v'nins. He expects from us based on the hoyach madrega of Klal Yisrael. The heilige words of the Maharal, B'ma she'ein Yisrael shum madrega beinanis. Oy shehem moishlim al hakol, oy shakol moishlim aleim. Either they're moishel on everyone, and if not, everybody is moishel on them. So metake zoiche zayin b'meheirav yameinu b'karev mamish to get back to unser madrega.